Hi there, and welcome to Naturally Recovering Autism. I'm your host, Karen Thomas, and I want to thank you so much for being here with us and tuning in, and hopefully tuning in weekly, because there's so many valuable resources that I have to share with you. And as you know, my own son was diagnosed with autism now 14 years ago, and I was told to drug him and try behavioral therapies, and basically good luck. There wouldn't be anything else we could do for him. And fortunately, my background as a craniosacral therapist and in holistic health and studying the brain let me know that the brain could heal, and I had to figure it out on my own, as you're doing. And I know it takes a lot of time and effort to do that, and so now I want to save you a lot of the time and the expense that I put out and walk you through it. And I've created a free online workshop to help you understand what those steps are, because today my son is fully recovered. I'm proud to say he's a senior in college. He lives 800 miles away from me on his own in his own apartment. All of his symptoms today of autism are gone that he once had. And we know every child's level of recovery is different, but they can get better if you know what to do. And so my 4-stage workshop, again, is free for you. And I go through stage 1 of healing the gut, stage 2 of natural, safe, heavy metal detoxification, stage 3 of clearing the co-infections like mold and Lyme and strep, and then stage 4 is brain support and repair once you get all the inflammation and the toxins out of the way. And you can get that free workshop at naturallyrecoveringautism.com/free workshop. It's there for you, and please share it with anybody you know who might be interested in it as well, because these resources are available, and parents are out there searching for them, and I want to help as many people as we can. And again, thank you for being here with us today, and I think you're really going to appreciate today's topic as well, because we're going to talk about detoxification, which is huge for children in autism, and even more so, we're going to get specific. We're going to be talking about colonic hydrotherapy and enemas and how beneficial they can be in the whole gut healing process, and how they help to flush toxins out of the liver, because our kids have congested livers, and that's the organ of detoxification. So we're going to be going into depth about that today, and we're fortunate to have Julia Loggins here with us today, and she is an expert in colonic hydrotherapy. And so I'm going to give you a little bit of her background before we begin with the interview, and so you know a little bit about Julia, because she has her own personal story and also does some work with children with autism, which she'll tell you about today too. Julia Loggins is a certified colon therapist and gut health expert, has helped thousands heal over her 36-plus-year career as a gut health expert in private practice in Santa Barbara, California. Ms. Loggins received her health educator certification from Hippocrates Health Institute in 1983 and trained with Dr. Ann Wigmore and Dr. Brian Clement in facilitating the reversal of chronic and acute illness. She holds a certification from the Whole Body Institute in Mind-Body Reproductive Health. However, Ms. Loggins says that her childhood experience of life-threatening illness, spending most of her first 2 decades in and out of hospitals, and saving her own life is her most profound credential in understanding the nuances of healing mind and body, and the critical role of digestive health and the trauma that can accompany sustained stress, sustained stress and disease. She's the author of 2 books, Dare to Detoxify and It Takes Guts to Be Happy, a 21-day plan to heal your belly and recharge your life. And as usual, I have created a page to go along with today's episode for anything we talk about and also for any links to things that we discuss as well. And that will be at naturallyrecoveringautism.com/59. Just the numbers 59. And that will be there for you today as well. So Ms. Loggins, Julia, thank you so much for being here with us today. I really appreciate you being able to join us and for taking your time and your expertise for us.
Oh, I'm excited to be here. This is a subject very near and dear to my heart, and of course, the subject of detoxification is what I spend my days doing. But the subject of healing autism naturally is like, as I said to you, very, very dear to my heart.
Yeah, you mentioned that you have a friend who has a son with autism, and you helped to heal that child as well.
Yes, my closest friend whose son was diagnosed with autism, and he also had multiple seizures. And like you, she fought the doctors and even her husband at the time, who suggested drugs and all kinds of therapies. And because of our long relationship and her understanding my path and what had happened to me through drugs and what that did to my body, we created a protocol probably really similar to the one you ended up creating for your son. And her son is now also completely free of symptoms and is a junior in college living in Seattle, Washington. She lives in Southern California. So he is also entirely on his own. He's a black belt in karate and was an Eagle Scout, a superb musician, excels in school. So it can be done.
Yeah, and thank you for sharing that, because it does help parents hear more than my story. And there are stories like this all over the world happening today, if you know what to do. And that's what we want to be able to share with our listeners. And so I know you have your own story too. And you said you spent the first 2 decades of your life in and out of hospitals. So I'm kind of curious, how you came into this. Give us a little bit of background on you, maybe.
Sure, absolutely. So I was born in 1955. I'm almost 65. And those were the prime time years for chemicals, the pharmaceuticals. And I was born with what we now know to be environmental sensitivity. I had vaccine reactions, but they were not diagnosed at the time. My mom remembered them later on in years as we learned about vaccine injury, but at the time they weren't identified. And so by the time I was 1 year old, I was already struggling for my life with life-threatening asthma, allergies. And then as I got more and more medication, because this was the 50s and I wasn't breastfed, then I also developed autoimmune disease, rheumatoid arthritis. I became a universal reactor, so I was allergic to absolutely everything. Over the years, I had 3 near-death experiences, and doctors finally told my parents I wouldn't live past 17. So
wow.
So, my organs were failing. There wasn't much left. I was sent to drug experimental programs all over the country, and with each one, successively, another organ would begin to fail, which now we understand why. We understand that because we understand what happens with pharmaceutical drugs and our fragile organs. And for people like me who are environmentally sensitive, and that includes every child with autism, we know that their pathways for detoxification are all compromised. And so I was lucky enough to meet a doctor in my late teens who began to understand environmental sensitivities.
Yeah, you sound like a child basically with autism. I mean, that's what it is. It just depends on how you're affected. We're going to take a short break right here, but when we come back, we'll jump right back into the all of those things you just talked about, the organ toxicity, environmental sensitivities, and these pathways of detoxification. You're listening to Naturally Recovering Autism. I'm your host, Karen Thomas. Stay with us. We will be right back.
Have you ever wondered why some children recover from their symptoms of autism while others never seem to get any better? After 13 years of research, Karen Thomas has recovered her own son from his symptoms of autism naturally. She now shares how she did it with you in her free webinar so that you can have the right resources and knowledge to help your child. The definition of recovery is to regain health. Karen offers this to you in 4 stages: healing the gut, natural heavy metal detoxification, balancing the co-infections of autism, brain support, and repair. Register now for this free webinar to help you know what you can do to help your child to sleep better, be more calm, improve focus, and reach their fullest potential to live a happy, healthy life. Go to naturallyrecoveringautism.com/free workshop, empowering parents with the resources to naturally recover autism from a mom who's done it.
Hi there, and welcome back to Naturally Recovering Autism. I'm your host, Karen Thomas, and I want to thank you again for being here with us today. We are talking about a very important subject for autism recovery, and that is about detoxification, and specifically we'll be talking about enemas and colonic hydrotherapy. But before the break, we have Julia Loggins here with us, a certified colon therapist and gut health expert. And Julia, you were talking before the break about the importance of how the organs become toxic with the environmental sensitivities. And I see our kids kind of as little canaries in our coal mine world here, and there's so many things to protect yourself from in a sense today. And these pathways of detoxification really do get compromised. The liver gets congested, the lymphatic system gets backed up. So why don't we talk a little bit about, in your experience, the gut health and the scope of your practice and how you're able to help people with this and what what it does. Give us a little background there.
Absolutely. So the key to healing our gut, and of course then healing our brain, because we know the gut and the brain are connected, and that's something I learned from the beginning of my practice. But when I began practicing 36 years ago, the science wasn't as prevalent as it is now on the gut-brain connection. Now we really understand all the science of those connections. So what happens is when the liver is congested and the colon is impacted, and as you said, the lymphatic system is congested, then the toxins can't move out of the body. And what is so key is that we always remember to come back to detox as it's the place we start and the place we always keep coming back to whatever protocol follows that. Because what I do see in my practice is that people will hear about some kind of detox protocol that they want to do, and they'll forget that the key to that is liver detoxification and colon detoxification. Because if you jump into some kind of detox protocol for heavy metals or anything at all, and the colon isn't flushed, then what happens is the body just has nowhere for those toxins to go because those pathways are clogged, and those toxins will just be recirculated. So it's so important for all of our listeners to understand the basis for that healing process is cleansing the colon and, of course, proper digestion, the understanding of what allows for assimilation and elimination. And then healing happens after that. The body is miraculous, and healing will follow once the detox practices are enlisted.
And that's one of the first things I tell people that I work with, like in my mentoring program. If you don't have some type of binders and support for your liver and your lymphatic system in place, even just starting the right diet, like getting rid of the processed carbohydrates and the sugars and the things that the kids are usually eating, and then get rid of those out of the diet, as the bad bacteria starts to die off, we have what's literally called die-off reactions, and because they're releasing toxins. So you've got to have some support for these things as that's happening, and you'll often see heightened behaviors when there is detoxification going on, and especially when there's not enough binders in place, or when the detoxification processes are not working well enough. And so what is it that you're doing with colon hydrotherapy? I mean, there's colon hydrotherapy, and then there's enemas. So enemas are more of an at-home, and I'll have you explain, more about that in today's show. But and colonics. So the variations, and what are you doing? I know you also work with autism, so if you can I guess everybody with autism has congested livers, but a lot of the people that you're working with probably do too. So what can you share with us that's helpful there?
Sure. Well, and you're right. everybody I work with has congested livers, but in America today, almost everybody has congested livers. That's what we're dealing with. And you're right, our autistic kids are the canaries in the coal mine. And even though my symptoms weren't classically autistic because where mine expressed were around my lungs, which was life-threatening asthma, it's just we break where we're most vulnerable. It's all the same. So this will fit, definitely that population of kids with autism, but for their families, if they have other children who are expressing illnesses in different ways, the healing process is still the same, to come back to the detoxification pathways that need to be cleared. And so, yes, I do see I see teenagers definitely for colon hydrotherapy, and I'm happy to, whenever you'd like me to, talk more about that in detail. Enemas are something we do at home. And I also suggest for kids and teenagers and families alike, because it's nice to do things as a family, to make sure that things are moving through, that the kids are having bowel movements every day. I created a really gentle product because I couldn't find one on the market that was gentle enough, that was not a laxative, but that moved things through the colon in a gentle way. It's called the Happy Gut Cleanse. It's available on my website. But I did that because I wanted an herbal formula that was very gentle and that teenagers could take and kids could take. And it's so important that everybody is using the bathroom, that they're going to the bathroom every single day. And this may seem like a simple thing or a silly thing to talk about, but it's so important because when that's sort of the number one thing, even before we get to colonics and enemas, that kids are using the bathroom every day, and that it's simple and easy and it becomes something that's comfortable for them.
Yeah, a lot of kids, I hear this from parents a lot, their child might actually become fearful of going to the bathroom because they've been in pain for so long and they get really constipated. That's right. And I'm always trying to educate parents in understanding too, and they're fearful. So yeah, ways that we have to help them to keep things moving. I know mitochondria is an issue too, to make sure that their cells are getting enough energy, so the muscles get enough energy to push the stool through the bowels. But there's, the constipation is an issue because the longer the stool sits in the bowel, the longer time available for the toxins in it to reabsorb back through the bowel walls and into the body, the bloodstream, and then recirculate again through the body. So yeah, constipation and it's such a big issue with children with autism. And sometimes because of the dysregulation also in the gut and the dysbiosis going on with children with autism, it'll go sometimes bounce back and forth from constipation to diarrhea. But the constipation, all of that is, it's such a big issue. We're going to take a short break right here. You're listening to Naturally Recovering Autism. I'm your host, Karen Thomas. Please stay with us. We're going to be right back. Hi there, and welcome back to Naturally Recovering Autism. I'm your host, Karen Thomas. Thank you again for being here with us today. We have Julia Loggins with us, who is a certified colon therapist and gut health expert. And right now we're talking more about detoxification and specifically the constipation issue. So before the break, Julia, we were kind of, we were discussing that, and it's such a big issue with children, especially on the autism spectrum. So why don't we talk a little bit about digestion issues and reasons for constipation, and then help for it?
Sure, absolutely. So I saw something in your blog that I want to highlight. I know you've already spoken about it, but it can't hurt to say it again, which is people sometimes think that the way to get things moving through our kids' bodies is more fiber. But my experience is that more fiber can do more harm than good, because when kids are congested or anyone is congested and they're constipated, more fiber just clogs things up. So that's why I always suggest using, whether it's a gentle herbal formula or an enema or colonic, other things, extra electrolytes is an excellent thing to use. aloe vera juice to get things gently moving through. But just more fiber alone isn't necessarily the best way to go. So, but to answer your question directly, for digestion, one of the reasons that kids and teens dealing with autism have constipation is because their food is not breaking down. They're not making food enzymes in their stomach. And actually, research shows us that 75% of adults over 40 are not making food enzymes either. So this really applies to everyone out there, but specifically to kids with autism. They're not making digestive enzymes. So one of the supplements that can be important for you to consider is a digestive enzyme for your child. And the way to know if your child is digesting their food is, do they lose energy after they eat? Are they exhausted? Are their symptoms worse after eating? These things all show that the food is just not digesting, and that food that's not digested will end up in the colon and cause constipation.
And that is important to know too. I mean, there's symptoms that people see, and digestive enzymes. I'll actually I'll add it to the show notes for today. I did interview an expert on enzymes for autism a while back, so I will link to that as well, because between that and hydrochloric acid, another thing that comes up a lot is GERD or acid backup. So you want to touch on that a little bit too?
I do. And hydrochloric acid it's such an important enzyme for the stomach, and we get afraid of it because we think, we don't want to be acidic, and that's what's going to cause acid reflux. But it's actually that we are not making hydrochloric acid in our stomach, and that's what's causing our digestive problems. So hydrochloric acid is a really important key for digestive health. It's the enzyme that digests protein, which is the hardest enzyme to digest, and yet the most important nutrient for our brains. Digestible protein is so important. And I created a digestive enzyme that's simply hydrochloric acid, so it's very simple. But because digestible protein is often hard to get into kids, they're not interested in food, or they're just not interested in the right food. I created some sugar-free, gluten-free protein powders just to make getting digestible food into kids and teenagers palatable and fun and easy, which is always a help for parents, which is how to get really good, high-quality food into kids and teenagers. And that way we're doing our best to avoid getting into the constipation, because we're getting really highly digestible foods into our kids and teens in an easy way.
You know, I think some of the picky eating, it has to do with, for one, sensory issues in the mouth. Food is a little uncomfortable in their mouth for them in the beginning,
right?
Until their central nervous system starts to calm down. But they also, I think, become fearful of food, and I see parents become fearful of feeding time too. So the child sees the parent fearful, and they're thinking, well, if mom's afraid, there must be something to be afraid of, and the child has been feeling uncomfortable.
Absolutely. And I know personally what that feels like myself. You know, when I was struggling with allergies, there were 4 foods I could eat for 2 years. And while I was healing my autoimmune system, and I was terrified to eat. And I know exactly what that's like. And I know what that was like for my mom. She just did a series of videos for me of interviews of what it was like to be my mom and to go through that experience and how scary that was. And so I know firsthand what that's like. And so, you know, creating something that was palatable for kids was so important to me, having been there myself, having kids with autism in my practice, and also just kids and teens who are picky eaters for so many reasons, and to try to take that fight off the table, to try to take that struggle off the table has always been really important to me personally. So that's an important piece. And then the detox protocols, whatever you think your listeners would want to know about that, I'm happy to answer.
Yeah, I mean, I have some things that I use myself for that make sure that we get through phase 1 and 2 liver detoxification that helps support the lymphatic system, other important binders that to add in chlorella and occasionally activated charcoal, various things that can be really helpful to grab those extra toxins when the liver does really start to dump. And the child can sometimes just get much worse. And those are strong indicators that, maybe more binders are being needed, but the detoxification that you're doing is working. But we want to do it safely. We want to do it gently. We want to do it slowly. We've got to add in the extra support. So do you have some additional things too? I mean, of course, we're going to talk about colonics and enemas. Did you have something else that you wanted to talk about before that?
Well, plenty of water, of course, and sometimes that's tricky to get in to our kids and our teenagers. So adding a sugar-free electrolyte to that is not only really important for the metabolic health, and that helps constipation too, making sure there's enough electrolytes. Of course, we're avoiding Gatorade and all those kinds of sugary electrolyte drinks, but just a sugar-free electrolyte supplement. I think that goes a really long way. And yes, I agree with you about activated charcoal. That can be a help as well, because it's going to bind things and get things moving. And we always do want to jump into detoxification things, but I love when the body can do it itself. Lymphatic drainage therapy can be key, as long as it's married to some kind of enema colon therapy or herbal formula that's moving things through, because lymphatic drainage therapy is going to those toxins into the body, and we want to keep that flowing. But I'm a huge fan of lymphatic drainage therapy. I've seen great results with it.
Yeah, I actually, in my mentoring program, I have made a lymphatic drainage a video to help parents understand how they can actually work on those areas on their child themselves, even at home. We need to take a short break. We need to take a short break right here. You're listening to Naturally Recovering Autism. Stay with us. Hi there, and welcome back to Naturally Recovering Autism. I'm your host, Karen Thomas, and thank you again for being here with us today. We are talking about detoxification, and specifically, we will be getting into now more about colonic hydrotherapy and enemas. And we have Julia Loggins here, who is a colon therapist and gut health expert. And Julia, I'd like to get into colonics a little bit, to have you as the expert help explain, how they work and what age is appropriate, the youngest age to bring a child in. And, there's that whole aspect around the child feeling safe and comfortable. And I know that when children have received colonics, that I've talked to the parents, that they really, once you can kind of get through into the first appointment and the child understands afterwards how much better they feel, and if the parent, if they're young enough, the parents can stay there with them, and just making the child understand that once the first appointment is done, then it's easy to get to them to following appointments, because they really realize how much better it is, or how much better they feel. And because the colonic hydrotherapy gets so high up into the GI tract, much further than enemas, which we'll talk about soon too, that they really are able to, if you're doing a parasitic cleanse or something that you really need to get up there higher, it's able to flush the entire GI tract. So can you talk about all of those pieces, especially, what do you feel is the earliest age that a child is comfortably and safely coming in for a colonic hydrotherapy appointment?
So really, colonics can be done at any age. I've done colonics for kids as young as 5, and I generally see kids around 7 to 8. Definitely, I have lots of teens in my practice, and that's, they're comfortable, and they're often they're often leading the charge because they feel horrible, and after they get a colonic, they feel so much better, and they feel so much better instantly. And there are so few things that can bring relief that quickly. It's pretty amazing to experience, because once those toxins are flushed out of the body, the results can be really fast, especially for kids and teenagers. But it's so important for me as a colon therapist that the kids are very comfortable, and that I've had sometimes, and I'm okay with this, that a kid will come in with their family and we'll meet and they'll just get to be comfortable and they'll get on the table, and then maybe that's all they can do at the time. The actual insertion of a small tube into their rectum and small amounts of water that are going to go in and out. Of course, the child or teen is totally covered up, and I'm talking to them and I'm right there, and whatever level of abdominal massage that they're comfortable with, I'm doing. But if all they're comfortable with doing the first time is just to come in and meet me and maybe get on the table, that's okay. I'm willing to do this in a step-by-step process, and you want to find a colon therapist that's had experience in this area and is willing to work with you step by step, because building trust and safety is the most important thing. I mean, after all, that alone creates healing. That alone creates that gut-brain connection to feel safe, and that's a big piece of it. So then the process itself, where yes, a colonic the water can get farther up into the colon than an enema can. And that colon, of course, is the last 6 feet of the lower intestine, and it can hold a tremendous amount of waste, even in a small child, especially one that's constipated. And that's why I do suggest using, there's very favorable formulas like the one I created, the Happy Gut Cleanse, to get things moving so that they're not completely blocked up by the time they get in to see a colon therapist. But it's a comfortable, safe procedure, and I always make sure that all the way through the kids are feeling safe and comfortable. If there's a moment in it where they're not feeling good or they're feeling a little nauseous, that means the liver is releasing, and I'm always reassuring them through that moment, okay, this is really good. You're feeling a little nauseous because the poisons are moving out of you, and in 30 seconds you're going to feel better. Let's make a countdown, and we'll pick things in the room to focus on. We'll do visualizations. We'll create a story, a healing story. All of that to create a healing atmosphere where I create an experience and the parents are always there. So I'm creating an experience where we're doing visualization. We're picturing the poisons leaving the body. We're creating a safe place. So it's a whole experience, and that's what you want. And I'm explaining it so that you find someone and they create that kind of a place, and that's where healing is going to occur. So it's, yes, the poisons are coming out, but it's there's a connection. We want to connect the child or teen's brain to what's going on. So we're completely integrating the experience. Where nobody's leaving their body while this is happening. We're just very present.
I think the child having a greater understanding, even when they're 5, they can again, feeling really comfortable, they can understand what's going on if it's explained to them, and in a way, like you said, the visualization is a great idea, where they can understand why they're doing something that they're doing. Because if you just take a child in for an appointment like that and you don't explain it to them, they have no idea why you're doing what you're doing. But if you explain it to them, then that understanding helps a lot.
Oh, it does. I mean, I'm a person that had spent, their childhood going through so many different protocols. So many things were done to every part of my body. I had severe trauma from that. And so I'm so conscious of creating safety and trust in the environment. I know what it's like to be a child where people are doing things to you or talking about you as if you're not there. And language is so important, and our kids and teens, no matter what their level, no matter what it appears, we know they're fully present. And so I'm always relating to them that way. And that's just going to it's amazing that just those things alone and reconnecting the gut, the brain, especially if there's been discomfort, if there's been any area that there's discomfort we want to disassociate from. So if I create a colonic experience where we're bringing everything together and the child is, then that can create healing. And then when they go home and they're doing a home enema, they bring that experience with them, which is what can be so valuable about getting a professional colonic and then bringing that experience into your home enema experience.
And then the child wants to come back again, which is important too, so that they don't have the fear of going back there for something that's so beneficial. We're going to take a short break right here. You're listening to Naturally Recovering Autism. Stay with us. Hi there, and welcome back to Naturally Recovering Autism. I'm your host, Karen Thomas, and today we're talking about detoxification, but specifically with enemas and colonic hydrotherapy to help cleanse the gut. We want to relieve constipation, help detoxify those toxins that are sitting up in the colon that get lodged in there, and especially when the liver is backing up and the organs of detoxification aren't working properly, how beneficial this can be for moving that out of the system. It's a relief to not only the body, but also the brain. I mean, you really can feel the gut-brain connection in that way, the sense of anxiousness for a lot of people and the stress, and how that can really be alleviated with this type of therapies. And it's very important. We talked about having your child as early as age 5 could have a colonic, but you really want to go to an educated, certified practitioner. And I'm going to link to that in today's show notes at naturallyrecoveringautism.com/59, so you know how to find one of those near where you live, because that is really important. And having a child feel safe and comfortable in this experience. So this is if you're taking your child to a colon hydrotherapist at their office, because this is something that really needs to be done by an educated practitioner. Now I'd like to move into more of enemas, because this is something that parents can do at home for their children. And Julia, I would love for you to explain, some of the steps that are really important to do at home, and making a child or a parent as well feel safe with what they're doing and the steps. And I know that you have a couple of books that you walk through the steps with. So maybe you can just explain a little bit more about enemas and some good steps to take with children.
Absolutely. And I love teaching things that we can do at home, because as parents, we want to be able to do as much as we can at home. And then I want the kids and teenagers themselves to have tools in their toolbox so that they can make themselves feel better when they're and they're going through any kind of detox where they have heightened symptoms, and they'll have that in their toolbox forever. So a home enema is something that you can absolutely safely do at home. After all, our grandmothers and great-grandparents did them, and they've been done for a long, long time. This is nothing new. And I do give a step-by-step detail for how to do enemas in both of my books, Dare to Detoxify and It Takes Guts to Be Happy. You can find those on cleansingforenergy.com, my website. So step-by-step, and I also have some YouTube videos on doing it, because it's simple. You want to make sure that you buy an enema bag. You can use an enema bag or a bucket, and using very warm water. And you want to make sure that your child is feeling very comfortable with this. And, one of the ways to do it is you can do one on yourself and let your child watch you. I mean, I'm always, having parents and kids share these experiences, because the more that they become day to day and familiar and not scary, it's just because, I'm doing this and watch me do this. And so I think that's what I suggest to parents, is they do it and make it something everybody's doing.
And I know too that coffee enemas are really beneficial, especially if you're they really, because the coffee helps stimulate the hemorrhoidal veins, which then through even though it's distal, because the enema doesn't have to go very far up, but those veins being stimulated also helps to stimulate the liver to and the gallbladder to help to flush out some of the toxins. And this can be really helpful if your immune system is lowered, if you feel like you're catching a flu or a cold at all. It can be really, really beneficial. Do you have something that I know you want to use some very, very specific organic coffee enemas, coffee that's specifically made for enemas as well, and those can be found on some quality sites online.
Yeah, absolutely. And I do coffee enemas and coffee colonics, and I do coffee colonics in the office. One of the great things about going to a colon therapist is that because there is absolutely caffeine, you have to use regular organic coffee beans with caffeine. One of the great things about a colonic is it makes flushing the caffeine out really easy. It's often even easier, especially in the very beginning, to get that caffeine flushed out by a colon therapist. It takes a little bit of practice of doing just water enemas before you get good enough to make sure, because you really want to make sure when you're working with kids and teens that caffeine is getting flushed. So if you're doing a coffee retention enema at home, make sure you are doing bags of water after that. So that's not only is that a really important time for the liver to flush in the subsequent bags after the coffee retention, but it moves the caffeine and the acid out of the body.
And so is there a certain amount of liquid that you would generally advise a parent to use at home? Because I know some people are afraid of using too much. So do you have anything to share with that?
Sure. So I would advise starting with about a pint. Now, the colon, an adult colon, can hold 2 quarts of water easily, and water, of course, is not a foreign thing to the colon. That's something that's moving through the colon all the time. But I would suggest using a pint of warm water, and we want to make sure it's body temperature a little bit above. And as I said, the most important thing is if you can tell your child really specifically what this is about. So they're engaged in this like a science project. And like you said, kids and teens, they understand. You can look at books, you can look at diagrams, you can look at my videos, so they really understand what this is about, and it's something that they're very much a part of. It's not being done to them. Because as a kid, having those things done to me, I'm always seeing this from 2 points of view, as the practitioner healing and as the child or teenager whom we're looking to heal, and I'm wanting their comfort and safety and cooperation to be number one. But I see it all the time. I mean, I see once kids discover that they feel better, they're so on top of this. In fact, they're so on top of their diet changes. When I'm doing my courses and kids and teenagers get into it, they're usually the ones who make more changes than the parents, because they are like, oh, wow, I feel good now. And that's how they feel about colonics and enemas. If they know they can relieve their symptoms, then they're on board.
Right. I mean, they literally, can focus better, have a clearer head, feel calmer. And there's so many things that are beneficial to, as we mentioned, the gut is now called the second brain. And there's so much documented scientific studies now about how the gut does control the brain. So everything we're talking about for detoxification is not only helpful for the detoxification process, but it's also helpful in supporting the brain. We're going to take a short break right here. You're listening to Naturally Recovering Autism. I'm your host, Karen Thomas. Please stay with us. We will be.
Have you ever wondered why some children recover from their symptoms of autism while others never seem to get any better? After 13 years of research, Karen Thomas has recovered her own son from his symptoms of autism naturally. She now shares how she did it with you in her free webinar so that you can have the right resources and knowledge to help your child. The definition of recovery is to regain health. Karen offers this to you in 4 stages: healing the gut, natural heavy metal detoxification, balancing the co-infections of autism, brain support, and repair. Register now for this free webinar to help you know what you can do to help your child to sleep better, be more calm, improve focus, and reach their fullest potential to live a happy, healthy life. Go to naturallyrecoverinautism.com/free workshop, empowering parents with the resources to naturally recover autism from a mom who's done it.
Hi there, and welcome back to Naturally Recovering Autism. I'm your host, Karen Thomas, and today we're talking with Julia Loggins, who is a certified colon therapist and gut health expert. And we've been discussing detoxification and colonic hydrotherapy and enemas. And enemas are something, again, you can do at home safely. And I know that, sometimes you'll have some questions around these things. So it is important to know that Julia is also available for on-phone consults. And so I will link to her website and her contact information on today's show notes, which will be at naturallyrecoverinautism.com/59. So even if you're working with a therapist, a colon hydrotherapist near you, or you're thinking about going to one in the future and you have questions, that Julia has mentioned that she is available, again, via phone or Skype. So that's really, really helpful knowledge for you as a parent, especially to know, because I know there are questions that come up around these topics and the safety and it might be something that's totally foreign to you. You haven't heard much about this, or you've heard about it, but it's always seemed scary in some way, or just because you just don't know enough about it. And that's where we want to make sure that you feel comfortable. And Julia is available for a resource. So again, naturallyrecoverinautism.com/59. We'll link to all of her resources on her website there for you. And Julia, we wanted to mention, we've talked about enzymes and a couple of the herbs that you might want to mention that you like as well. And then we can touch on probiotics. We just have a few minutes here, but probiotics do help to recolonize the gut with the positive, good bacteria. And so, and I've done some episodes in the past on probiotics, and I can link to those in the show notes. But Julia, could you comment from that, from your educated standpoint?
Well, it is important because one of the things I see with kids that are autistic is high levels of yeast and candida and yeast overgrowth. Of course, we know that also comes from sugar or too many antibiotics. But sustained stress, can throw the pH off as well. So one of the things that help our kids who are dealing with candida or yeast, and you can have a yeast overgrowth without having a vaginal yeast infection. And the signs of that are rashes, bloating, any kinds of itchy things like that can be yeast. And probiotics are really helpful for that. So I have a link on that. You've done a show on that. I have some myself that don't need to be refrigerated that they can get on my website. That can be a really helpful supplement, and it's an easy one to add into your kids' diet.
Yeah, a lot of them, if it's in a capsule form, it can be opened up and poured into a food or beverage, or if it's a soft gel, exactly. It can be opened up too. Yeah, because our kids, a lot of them can't take or won't take a pill, even if it's a small soft gel. So it's important to know that those can be.
They can be, exactly. You can disguise anything in a smoothie too. So I often advise for parents to just dump things into a smoothie and don't even ask your child to swallow pills or capsules. It makes it so much easier.
And I know you said you have some digestive proteins powders, but what do you, like parents I always, really, especially with candida, I want to say stay away from sugars and even fruit while you're especially in the beginning part of that detox cleanse for it, because you don't want to feed sugars to those bacteria because they thrive on them. And so maybe you can give an example, and we're just almost out of time here, but an example of a smoothie that you might put together that you feel safe with.
It's true. It's funny. I actually created protein powders that were good with just water, just so that they would not need to have fruit added to them for that very reason, because of my clients dealing with so much candida and yeast overgrowth. And me personally. So if you have a protein powder that all you need to do is add water, that's really the best. Otherwise, I would advise a very low, you can do vegetables or a very low sugar fruit like a berry, like raspberries, organic for sure. You might want to make sure that those berries are organic. Frozen is fine.
Okay, thank you so much, Julia, for being here with us. We're out of time, but I appreciate your time, your expertise, and I think this is really valuable for our listeners and parents alike. Again, you can find the show notes today at naturallyrecoveringautism.com/59. I'm your host, Karen Thomas, and please join us next week. We'll be talking about homeopathy with Amy Lansky, who is the author of The Impossible Cure, one of the best books written on homeopathy by a mom who actually says she cured her son from autism from homeopathy, and that is what her book is about. So we will have Amy here with us next week, so please tune in for that. Share this with anybody you know who could be interested to, please, so they get these resources again. And Julia, again, once again, thank you so much for being here, and we will